I'm Gretchen, 29, female. I'm a cosmetologist, and I own a small but beloved salon in my hometown. My life revolves around two things: my 10-year-old daughter, Lily, and the business I built from the ground up with my own two hands. We don't have a lot, but we have a peaceful life, and most importantly, we have our dignity. I thought that was enough until my own sister decided that our dignity was something she could borrow and break at her convenience. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. My older sister, Sarah, and I exist in different universes. While I was studying for my esthetician license and taking out a small business loan, she was getting a degree in marrying well. And to her credit, she graduated with honors. Her husband, Mark, was a successful businessman who saw her as the perfect accessory, and in return, he gave her a sprawling house in the suburbs, a luxury SUV, and a membership to the local country club. My world was built on hard work and passion for my craft. Hers was built on her husband's credit rating. The distance between us wasn't just geographical, it was a chasm of values and lifestyles. Our relationship, for the most part, was one of polite distance. We'd see each other at Christmas and Thanksgiving, where she'd give me pitying looks and offer unsolicited advice about finding a provider for Lily and me. She'd compliment my salon by saying it was cute and a nice little hobby. For me, completely ignoring the 80-hour weeks I'd put in to make it profitable, I learned to just smile, nod, and change the subject. It was easier than starting a fight that I knew I could never win, because Sarah didn't argue with facts, she argued with disdain. So, when she called me 3 weeks before my niece Olivia's 10th birthday, my guard was immediately up. Her tone was syrupy sweet, a sure sign she wanted something. "Gretchen, darling," she began, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. "Olivia is having her big 10-year-old bash in a few weeks, and of course, we'd absolutely love for you and precious little Lily to be there." I hesitated. These parties were always an ordeal. They were less about the child and more about Sarah showing off her wealth to her equally affluent friends. The last one we attended involved a petting zoo with a miniature pony, a 4-tiered cake that cost more than my monthly rent, and a group of women judging my off-the-rack dress. "Oh, that's so sweet of you to think of us, Sarah. Let me check my calendar," I said, stalling for time. "Don't be silly, you have to come." She insisted, the sweetness already starting to curdle. "It's for family, and actually, I was hoping you could do me a tiny little favor." There it was. "The other shoe." I braced myself. "What is it?" "Well," she said, drawing out the word, "the catering company is charging an absolute fortune for servers, and Mark thinks we're spending too much already. I was thinking, since Lily is so mature for her age, she could help out a little. You know, just passing around some appetizers, maybe helping to cut the cake. It would be a good experience for her, teach her some responsibility." I was speechless. My mind reeled as I tried to process what she was asking. She wanted my 10-year-old daughter to be unpaid labor at her cousin's extravagant birthday party. She wasn't inviting Lily as a guest, a family member, a cousin. She was inviting her to be the help. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. She was cloaking this massive insult in the language of family and character building. "Sarah," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Lily is a guest. She's Olivia's cousin. She's not a waitress." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Gretchen." She scoffed, her tone shifting from manipulative to annoyed. "It's not like I'm asking her to scrub the floors. She'll be helping her aunt. It's what family does. Plus, all of Olivia's friends will be there, and it will look so much better if things are organized. You know how important appearances are." Her words hit me like a slap. Appearances, that's what it was all about. It wasn't about family or experience or even saving money. It was about maintaining her flawless image, and my daughter was just a pawn she was willing to use to achieve it. Part of me, the bigger part, wanted to tell her exactly where she could shove her party invitation. I wanted to unleash years of pent-up frustration about her condescension and her complete lack of respect for me and my life. But then I thought of Lily, my sweet, gentle daughter who adored her cousin Olivia, despite Olivia's inherited snobbery. Lily saw past all the money and the big house. She just wanted to play with her cousin. If I said no, Sarah would twist the story and tell everyone I was jealous and spiteful. She would tell Olivia that Lily didn't want to come, and it would break my daughter's heart. Lily had already been asking for weeks if she could go to the party, excited about the bouncy castle and the promised magician. I felt trapped. My sister had expertly cornered me, using my daughter's happiness as leverage. With a heavy heart and a stomach churning with resentment, I made a decision that I would come to regret more than anything. Fine, I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. We'll be there. Wonderful, Sarah chirped, her mission accomplished. Tell Lily to wear something simple. Dark pants and a white top would be perfect. We want her to look professional, you know. She hung up before I could respond, leaving me shaking with a rage so profound it left me breathless. I had just agreed to let my sister humiliate my daughter, all for the sake of a bouncy castle and a magic show. The day of the party felt like a march to the gallows. I dressed Lily in a simple pair of black leggings and a plain white t-shirt, just as Sarah had instructed. As I did, I felt a wave of self-loathing wash over me. I was dressing my child in a uniform. Lily, oblivious to the subtext, was just excited. "Do I look okay, Mommy?" she asked, twirling in front of the mirror. I forced a smile and told her she looked beautiful, a lump forming in my throat. When we arrived, the scene was even more obnoxious than I had imagined. The sprawling backyard was a carnival of excess. A massive, candy-colored bouncy castle towered over the manicured lawn. A professional magician was setting up his stage near the patio. A DJ was playing sanitized pop music, and a long table overflowed with gourmet food that probably cost more than my car. Sarah, dressed in a flowing designer sundress, greeted us at the gate. She gave my simple jeans and blouse a dismissive one, sober before turning her attention to Lily. "Ah, there's my little helper," she exclaimed, her voice loud enough for her nearby friends to hear. She completely ignored the gift we brought for Olivia. "Lily, sweetie, come with me. The guests are arriving, and the mini quiches need to be passed around." She grabbed my daughter's hand and pulled her toward the kitchen without a second glance at me. I stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling a mixture of fury and helplessness. One of Sarah's friends, a woman with a face so tight with Botox it looked painful, gave me a condescending smile. "It's so wonderful that you're teaching your daughter the value of a good work ethic so early," she commented before turning back to her conversation. The insult was clear. My daughter was from a working-class background, so it was only natural she should serve their children. I tried to intervene. I followed them into the house and found Sarah handing Lily a heavy silver tray laden with tiny pastries. "Sarah, this isn't right," I hissed, trying to keep my voice down. "She's a child. She's here to celebrate with her cousin." Sarah just rolled her eyes, the picture of practiced patience. "Gretchen, please don't make a scene. It's just a tray of quiches. She's fine. Look, she's having fun." She gestured to Lily, who was nervously trying to balance the heavy tray. My daughter was not having fun. She looked confused and overwhelmed, her eyes darting around at all the unfamiliar adult faces. For the next hour, I watched in silent agony as my sister directed my daughter around the party like a member of the catering staff. After the quiches came the pigs in a blanket. Then she had Lily walking around with a pitcher of pink lemonade, refilling the cups of her little friends. I saw Olivia, the birthday girl, point at Lily and whisper something to her friends, who then broke into a fit of giggles. They weren't seeing their cousin, they were seeing the help. Each giggle was a dagger in my heart. Lily's initial excitement had completely vanished, replaced by a quiet, dutiful resignation. She kept her head down, her shoulders slumped, avoiding eye contact with the other kids. The ultimate humiliation came when it was time for the cake. It was an enormous, castle-shaped confection that was met with squeals of delight from the children. After Olivia blew out her candles, Sarah and Mark cut the first slice. Then, Sarah handed my daughter a stack of plates and a cake server. "Okay, Lily," she said brightly, "time to serve your cousin and her friends." So there my daughter stood, serving slice after slice of birthday cake to the very children she should have been sitting with. She watched them laugh and eat while she was stuck behind the table, an outsider at her own family's party. I felt a hot, primal rage building inside me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip that entire dessert table over. I wanted to grab my daughter, walk out, and never speak to my sister or her insufferable husband again. But I was paralyzed by the fear of making a scene, of being labeled the crazy, jealous sister for the rest of my life. Sarah had engineered this situation so perfectly that if I reacted, I would be the one in the wrong. She was just having her niece help out. How could anyone object to that, so I did nothing. I stood by the French doors, my arms crossed tightly, and watched the last ounce of joy drain from my daughter's face. In that moment, I wasn't just angry at Sarah. I was angry at myself for being a coward, for choosing a fragile peace over my own child's dignity. The silence of my inaction was deafening, a failure that would haunt me long after the last piece of cake was served. The party finally wound down as the sun began to set. Parents collecting their sugar-fueled children threw casual thank yous in Lily's direction as she helped clear away discarded paper plates and plastic cups, a task Sarah had assigned her as her final duty. My sister, beaming from the success of her event, floated over to me. "See, that wasn't so bad," she said, as if she were the one who had made a great sacrifice. "Lily was a fantastic help. She's a natural at this. A natural at being a servant," she meant. I didn't trust myself to speak. I just nodded curtly, grabbed Lily's hand, and said, "We need to go." My daughter looked exhausted, her white shirt stained with a bit of chocolate frosting, and her eyes looking dull and heavy. She barely said goodbye to Olivia, who was too busy tearing open a mountain of expensive gifts to notice our departure anyway. The car ride was silent for the first 10 minutes. I kept glancing at Lily in the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, her small face a mask of quiet sorrow. The silence was thick with unspoken feelings, and I knew I had to be the one to break it. I needed to apologize, to explain, to try and fix the mess I had allowed to happen. "Honey," I started softly, "I am so sorry about today. That was not what I expected to happen. You should have been playing with the other kids, not." My voice trailed off, choked with emotion. That was all it took. Her carefully constructed composure crumbled. A single tear rolled down her cheek, then another, and soon quiet sobs filled the car. She tried to stifle them, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand, but she couldn't stop. I immediately pulled the car over to the side of the road, put it in park, and turned around in my seat to face her. "Mommy, why did I have to do that?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Olivia's friends were laughing at me. One of them called me the waitress. Olivia didn't even talk to me. She just pointed when she wanted more juice. I thought I was going to her party, but I wasn't. I was just there to work. Every word was a punch to my gut. She had understood everything. The condescension, the whispers, the humiliation. She had felt it all. I had hoped, prayed, that it had somehow gone over her 10-year-old head, but I was wrong. I had exposed her to the worst parts of my family's dysfunction, and she was the one paying the price. I unbuckled my seatbelt and climbed into the back with her, pulling her into a tight hug. She buried her face in my shoulder and cried, really cried, letting out all the hurt and confusion she had been holding in all afternoon. "You did nothing wrong, my love," I whispered, stroking her hair. "This is not your fault. This is my fault and Aunt Sarah's fault. What she did was wrong. It was mean and it was unfair, and I never, ever should have let it happen. I promise you, I will never let anyone treat you like that ever again." We sat there for a long time, just the two of us in the parked car on the side of the road as dusk settled around us. Her sobs slowly subsided into sniffles. As I held my daughter, my guilt and sadness began to curdle, hardening into a cold diamond, hard resolve. My sister had not just insulted me. She had used and wounded my child for the sake of her own vanity. She had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The cowardly part of me that had stood by and watched it all happen died on the side of that road. In its place, something new and fierce was born. I was done being the polite, accommodating little sister. I was done swallowing insults to keep the peace. The peace was a sham anyway. Sarah had shown me who she truly was, and I believed her. She had mistaken my patience for weakness, my kindness for an invitation to be walked all over. As I finally started the car and pulled back onto the road, driving my daughter home, I made a silent vow. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but I knew with absolute certainty that one day Sarah would need something from me. Not a favor, not a small bit of help, but something she desperately needed. And when that day came, I would be ready. I would remember the tear stains on my daughter's face and the weight of that silver tray in her small hands. And I would make sure my sister learned a lesson about the true meaning of value, respect, and family. Nearly a month passed. Life returned to our normal, quiet rhythm. The memory of the party faded for Lily, replaced by the more immediate concerns of school projects and playdates with her real friends. But for me, it didn't fade. It lingered like a toxic residue, a constant reminder of my sister's cruelty and my own failure to protect my daughter. I cut off all non-essential contact with Sarah. I let her calls go to voicemail and gave one-word answers to her texts. I was civil, but the warmth, what little there had been, was gone. She didn't seem to notice or care, which only confirmed what I already knew. Our relationship was a transaction, and she only engaged when she needed something. Then, one Tuesday night, my phone rang. It was almost 10 o'clock. The caller ID flashed Sarah. My first instinct was to ignore it, as I had been doing for weeks, but the late hour suggested it wasn't a casual call. Curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of foreboding, made me answer. Gretchen. Oh, thank God you picked up. Sarah's voice was a frantic, high-pitched squeak. All traces of her usual smug composure were gone. She sounded like she was on the verge of a full-blown panic attack. Sarah, what's wrong? Is everyone okay? I asked, a genuine flicker of concern cutting through my anger. No, nothing is okay. It's a disaster, a complete and utter catastrophe, she wailed. I could hear her pacing, the sound of her heels clicking frantically on what I assumed was her marble kitchen floor. What is a disaster? Calm down and tell me what happened. I said, my voice even. She took a shaky breath. It's the Winter Blossom Gala, she said, naming the high-profile charity event she was chairing. It was the biggest social event of the season in her wealthy enclave, a night where the elite gathered to flaunt their generosity and their designer gowns. Sarah had been bragging about her role as chairperson for months. Her photo was going to be in the society pages. For her, this gala wasn't about charity. It was her coronation as a local social queen. The gala is this Saturday, Gretchen, this Saturday, and the makeup artists. The entire team I hired for the runway models and the VIP guests, they've all canceled. The whole team. What, why? I asked. Food poisoning, or a stomach flu, or some other pathetic excuse, she shrieked. Their agent called me an hour ago. They're all sick, every last one of them. I've spent the last hour calling every high-end artist in the city, and they are all booked. Of course they're booked. It's the biggest gala of the year. My event is ruined. My reputation is ruined. Mark is going to kill me. And then I understood. The frantic call, the sheer panic, it was all clicking into place. For a moment, I just listened to her spiral, a cold, calm clarity washing over me. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The universe had delivered it to my doorstep, gift trapped in my sister's desperation. That sounds terrible, Sarah, I said, and I was proud of how steady my voice was. There was no trace of satisfaction, no hint of the grim justice I was feeling. Terrible, it's apocalyptic, she cried. My entire committee is counting on me. We have a runway show featuring a local designer. We have a dozen VIP wives who paid for a premium package that includes professional makeup services. It's all going to fall apart. Then her voice dropped, becoming thick with a desperate, pleading tone I had never heard from her before. Gretchen, I need your help. I need you. I know you have your salon, you have your team. You're so talented. I always said you were. The lie was so blatant it was almost funny. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. She, who had looked down on my profession as a cute hobby, was now begging for my expertise. She, who had treated my daughter like a servant, was now asking me to save her from the social humiliation she feared more than anything else. My salon, the one she sneered at, was now her only lifeline. I let the silence hang in the air, drawing it out for a few extra seconds, letting her panic simmer. I pictured her in her massive, sterile kitchen, her perfect life crumbling around her because a few makeup artists got sick. I don't know, Sarah, I said slowly, deliberately. It's very short notice. I have my own clients. My team is small. An event of that size. That's a huge undertaking. I'll pay you, she said immediately, the words tumbling out. I'll pay you whatever you want, double your usual rate, triple it. Just name your price, please, Gretchen. You're the only one who can help me. You're my sister. You're my sister. The words which he had once used to manipulate me into allowing Lily's humiliation were now being used as a plea for mercy. It was perfect, a beautiful, symmetrical piece of karmic poetry. It's not about the money, Sarah, I said, and I meant it. This is about a lot of things. Let me think about it. I need to see what's possible. Let's meet for coffee tomorrow morning to discuss the logistics. Yes, of course, anything, she said, grabbing the offer like a drowning woman grabbing a life raft. Whatever time, wherever you want to go. I'll text you the address, I said, 9 a.m. I hung up the phone and stood in the quiet of my small living room, my heart beating a steady, powerful rhythm. It wasn't a rhythm of anger anymore. It was the rhythm of control. The game had changed. The board was reset, and this time I was the one making the rules. The next morning, I chose the coffee shop. It wasn't a trendy place in her part of town. It was a small, unassuming cafe a block away from my salon. It was my territory. I arrived a few minutes early and chose a small table in the corner. I wanted her to come to me, to feel slightly out of her element. Sarah rushed in at 9 o'clock on the dot. A feat of punctuality I knew was born of pure desperation. She looked awful. Her expensive clothes were rumpled, and there were dark circles under her eyes that even her priciest concealer couldn't hide. She slid into the chair opposite me, foregoing any pleasantries. "Okay, so you'll do it, right?" she asked, her voice a tense whisper. "What do you need? How many artists? I can have Mark transfer the money right now." I took a slow sip of my coffee, deliberately making her wait. I looked her directly in the eye. "Like I said last night, Sarah, this isn't about the money. We need to talk about the price, and the price isn't financial." She looked confused, a flicker of her old arrogance returning. "What are you talking about? I said I'd pay you. What else is there?" This was my moment, the culmination of weeks of simmering anger, all channeled into a single, focused objective, before we discuss any professional arrangements. I began, my voice low and steady. "You and I are going to talk about Olivia's birthday party." The color drained from her face. She leaned back in her chair, a defensive, hostile look clouding her features. "What about it? That was a month ago. What does that have to do with anything?" "It has everything to do with everything," I replied, leaning forward. "You used my 10-year-old daughter as free labor. You humiliated her in front of her cousin and her friends. You dressed her in a uniform and had her serve cake at a party she was supposed to be a guest at. You didn't treat her like family. You treated her like an employee you didn't have to pay. And when I tried to protest, you told me not to make a scene." She flinched at the cold, hard recitation of the facts. She opened her mouth to argue, to deny, to twist it into something else, but I held up a hand. "No, you're not going to talk. You're going to listen. You did that because you don't respect me. You see my life, my job, my daughter as beneath you. You believe you're entitled to treat us however you want because you married a man with a bigger bank account. You have spent years looking down on me, Sarah, but today, right now, you are looking up, because I have something you desperately need and your money is worthless here." Sarah was stunned into silence. No one, least of all me, had ever spoken to her like this. She just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. "So, here's my counter-offer," I continued, pressing my advantage. "I will come to your gala. I will bring my 2 best artists, and we will work for 6 hours. We will do the makeup for your runway models and for your dozen VIP guests. We will be professional, we will be brilliant, and we will make your event look flawless. We will save you from the public humiliation you are so terrified of. I will do all of this for you for free." A look of immense relief washed over her face, but it was premature. "For free," she repeated, almost unable to believe it. "Yes, my professional services, my time, and my team's time will be a donation to your charity event," I said, "but my dignity, and more importantly, my daughter's dignity, is not for sale and it is not for donation. That requires a different kind of payment." "What kind of payment?" she whispered, dread creeping back into her eyes. "I want an apology," I stated. "Not to me, to Lily. You are going to come to my house. You are going to look my 10-year-old daughter in the eye, and you are going to apologize to her. You will tell her that you were wrong to treat her like a servant. You will tell her that she is family, a beloved cousin, and that you are sorry you hurt her feelings and embarrassed her. You will not make excuses. You will not say I'm sorry if you felt. You will say I'm sorry for what I did. A full, complete, and sincere apology to a child." She stared at me aghast. The idea of humbling herself before a child, my child, was clearly more horrifying to her than her gala falling apart. Her pride was everything, and I was demanding she sacrifice it. "That's my offer, Sarah," I said, leaning back in my chair. "My team and I save your reputation on Saturday, and in return, you give my daughter back the piece of her dignity you stole. You have until 5 p.m. today to decide. If I don't hear from you, I'll assume your answer is no, and you can start looking for a new makeup team. Maybe one of your country club friends knows how to use an eyeshadow brush." I stood up, leaving my half-finished coffee on the table. "The choice is yours," I said, looking down at her. For the first time in our lives, I had all the power. And I wasn't afraid to use it. I walked out of the coffee shop without a backward glance, leaving her to choke on her pride. The hours ticked by. I went to my salon and tried to work, but my focus was shot. My phone sat on the counter, a silent black rectangle, and my stomach was in knots. Part of me was terrified she would say no, that her pride was so immense she would rather let her entire event crash and burn than apologize to a child. Another darker part of me almost hoped she would, just so I could watch the fallout from a safe distance. My team, two talented artists named Maria and Chloe, knew something was going on. I had given them a heads up about a potential high-profile last-minute weekend gig. They were excited, but I warned them it was a long shot. They respected my privacy and didn't push for details. At 4:52 p.m., just 8 minutes before my deadline, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Fine, I'll do it. What time should I come over?" The relief was so sharp it almost felt like disappointment. I texted back a simple address and time: my house, 7 p.m. tonight, come alone. That evening, I explained the situation to Lily. I didn't want to ambush her. I sat her down on her bed and spoke to her gently. "Lily, honey, do you remember how you felt at Aunt Sarah's party?" She nodded, her expression immediately becoming guarded. "Well, Aunt Sarah is going to come over tonight. She wants to say something to you about that day. She feels bad about what happened, and she wants to apologize." Lily looked at me, her eyes wide with a child's pure sense of justice. "Really, I confirmed, and you don't have to say anything you don't want to. You just have to listen. Can you do that for me?" She nodded again, a small, brave gesture. When the doorbell rang at precisely 7 o'clock, I took a deep breath and opened it. Sarah stood on my doorstep, looking as if she were about to face a firing squad. She was holding a ridiculously large, brightly wrapped gift, clearly a desperate attempt to soften the blow. I stepped aside and let her in, closing the door behind her. "Lily is in the living room," I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. I led the way. Lily was sitting on the sofa, looking small and nervous. I sat down next to her, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. Sarah walked stiffly into the room. She stood awkwardly in the middle of my small living room, the garish gift clutched in her hands. This was it, her moment of reckoning. For a few agonizing seconds, she just stood there, her jaw tight. I could see the battle raging within her, her deeply ingrained pride warring with her desperate need for my help. Finally, she took a hesitant step forward. She looked at me, then at Lily. She opened her mouth, and what came out was a textbook non-apology. "Lily," she started, her voice strained, "I'm sorry if you felt uncomfortable at the party. I just thought it would be a good experience for you to—" "No." My voice was sharp, cutting her off mid-sentence. "That's not what we agreed to, Sarah." Sarah froze, her eyes flashing with anger. She looked from my stern face to Lily's expectant one. The gift in her hands suddenly seemed pathetic. This was the moment that would define everything. I had laid out my terms, and she was trying to squirm her way out of them. But there was a detail, a crucial piece of the puzzle, that she was missing. My demand for an apology wasn't just my condition for helping her. I had made it a public matter. "Let me be perfectly clear, Sarah," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "This apology, right here, right now, is the only thing that gets me and my team to your gala on Saturday. But you seem to be misunderstanding the stakes. You see, after our coffee this morning, I got a call from Susan Vance." Sarah's eyes widened in horror. Susan Vance was the head of the gala's organizing committee, a woman who held more social power than anyone in their town. She called me to ask if I'd be willing to step in and save the event. "It seems someone on your committee suggested me after you mentioned our little chat." I continued, enjoying the look of dawning comprehension on my sister's face. I told her I would be honored to help, but that I couldn't possibly commit until I had resolved a prior personal family matter. She was very understanding. She said she'd call me back tomorrow for my final answer. She also mentioned she was having a conference call with the entire gala committee tonight at 8 to update them on the makeup artist crisis. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 7:15 p.m. "So, you see, this isn't just about you apologizing to Lily anymore. This is about you giving me a reason to say yes to Susan Vance. Because if I tell her that I can't help because my own sister couldn't bring herself to genuinely apologize to my daughter, well, I can't imagine that story will stay private for long. Your reputation isn't just hanging on me doing your makeup. It's hanging on this very moment in this living room. It was a very public refusal, not my refusal to help, but my refusal to accept her disrespect." I had backed her into a corner so tight she couldn't breathe. Her social life, the very thing she valued most, was hanging by the thread of a sincere apology to a 10-year-old, the fight visibly drained out of her. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. She dropped the useless gift onto a nearby chair and took a step closer to the sofa. She knelt down so she was at eye level with my daughter. The gesture was so uncharacteristic it was shocking. "Lily," she said, and this time her voice was different. It was quiet, stripped of all its arrogance. It was the voice of someone who had truly and utterly lost. "I am sorry. I was wrong to make you work at Olivia's party. That was not your job. You were a guest, and you are my niece. I embarrassed you, and I hurt your feelings. It was a mean and thoughtless thing to do, and there is no excuse for it. I am truly very sorry." Lily looked at her and then at me. I gave her a small, reassuring nod. My daughter, who has a heart far more forgiving than mine, simply said, "It's okay, Aunt Sarah, thank you." Sarah stood up, looking utterly exhausted. "I'll see you on Saturday," she said to me, her voice barely a whisper. She turned and walked out of my house without another word. As the door clicked shut, I pulled Lily into a hug, feeling a profound sense of victory that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with justice. The Winter Blossom Gala was, by all accounts, a spectacular success. My team and I arrived early on Saturday, all professional polish and quiet confidence. Sarah was there, a shadow of her usual commanding self. She was polite, deferential, and she stayed out of our way, granting us complete creative control. We worked tirelessly for 6 hours in the designated VIP suite, transforming models and wealthy patrons into glamorous versions of themselves. Our work was flawless. People were raving, asking for my salon's business card and complimenting Sarah on her brilliant find. She accepted the praise with a tight, forced smile, knowing that her success was entirely owed to the sister she had disrespected for years. I didn't gloat. I didn't make a single snide remark. My victory wasn't in rubbing her face in it. It was in the quiet, undeniable proof of my value. I was not the cute hobbyist she had painted me as. I was a professional, an artist, and a business owner who had single-handedly saved her from social ruin. As we packed up our kits at the end of the night, Sarah approached me. The event was in full swing, music drifting in from the ballroom. "Thank you, Gretchen," she said, her voice low. You did an amazing job. Everyone is thrilled. "It's what I do." I replied simply, "I'm glad your event was a success." There was an awkward silence between us. The chasm that had always existed was now wider and more clearly defined than ever before. But something had changed. The foundation had shifted. "What you did," she started, then stopped, struggling for words. "Asking for the apology, it was. I've been thinking about it, about how I've treated you, and Lily." I just looked at her, waiting. I was wrong. She finally admitted, the words sounding foreign on her tongue. "For a long time, I was wrong. It wasn't a magical fix. It wouldn't instantly erase years of condescension, but it was a start. It was a crack in the wall of her pride, a tiny seed of humility that might, with time, grow into something resembling respect." "Thank you for saying that," I said, and for the first time it felt like we were two adults on equal footing. The aftermath extended beyond just Sarah. My business boomed. The word of mouth from that single event was more powerful than any advertising I could have paid for. My appointment book filled up for months in advance. I was able to hire another artist and finally start a college fund for Lily, a real one. The success felt earned, not just because of my skill, but because I had refused to devalue myself. The most important change, however, was in my family. My relationship with Sarah is still complicated and distant, but there is a new, unspoken boundary. She no longer makes snide remarks or offers pitying advice. Her husband, Mark, who once barely acknowledged my existence, now greets me with a grudging respect. They know I am not someone to be trifled with. They know my kindness is not a weakness, but the real victory is Lily. She saw me stand up for her. She saw that it is not okay for anyone, not even family, to treat you with disrespect. She learned that your dignity is not something you should ever negotiate. A few weeks after the gala, she came home with a drawing. It was of the two of us standing side by side. In the drawing, I was wearing a superhero cape. Underneath, she had written, "My mom, the boss." In the end, I didn't destroy my sister. I didn't ruin her party or her life. I simply held up a mirror and forced her to see the ugliness of her own behavior. I demanded a price that wasn't paid in money, but in humility. I taught my sister a lesson, but more importantly, I taught my daughter one. And in doing so, I finally learned it myself, yourself. Worth is the one thing you should never, ever give away for free.